The pale gray light of dawn was just bright enough for me to see my own breath turning to mist in front of my face. I could not feel my left leg anymore. 9 coyotes stood in a line less than 20 feet from me, close enough for me to count every one of them, and bright enough for me to see their teeth when the alpha growled. I could not run. I could not scream. I could only lie there and watch. Then the ground began to tremble beneath my back. A shape stepped out of the mist, taller than the pines around it, and in the first light of day, I saw every inch of it clearly. The one thing no one had ever believed was real. If you believe what is about to happen, leave the comment Sasquatch below. Now, let's get into Ren's story, the story of a woman who watched Bigfoot step out of the mist of urban legend. Ren Castellano had turned 32 that summer, but she still kept an old habit from her first years living in Denver. Whenever work gathered into a heavy mass inside her head, she found her way into the mountains. Hiking allowed her to trade one kind of invisible stress for a simpler form of exhaustion, something she could measure by heart rate, breath, and the distance left ahead. She was not a professional athlete, and she had never called herself someone who lived for the mountains. Ren's experience sat in that middle place, enough to make her confident, but not enough to erase every mistake. Still, she usually chose well-marked trails, moderate distances, and routes with enough people around that if something happened, help would not be too far away. In late November that year, Ren decided to try a longer route than usual near Wild Basin, in the southeastern part of Rocky Mountain National Park. The morning forecast called for cold weather, scattered clouds, and a chance of light snow later in the afternoon. Winds at higher elevation could increase, but there was no warning level. Ren planned to start early, hike to a high overlook near the tree line, then turn back before the light faded. Her first mistake was not being unprepared. It was the way she underestimated the final hours of the day as winter approached. Old snow lay in patches beneath the trees, while sunlit sections still showed hard dirt and stone. Ren moved at a steady pace, stopping briefly to drink water and check the map. Near noon, the trail began climbing higher and narrowing. The thin air made her breathe more deeply, but her body still responded well. Fresh snow began falling in the early afternoon. Small dry flakes spread far apart. They covered the rock with a thin layer just pretty enough to make the terrain look softer than it really was. Ren knew she should turn back earlier than planned. She had gone farther than usual and had lost time at a section blocked by a fallfaudrican. Still, the highest point was less than 1 mile away, according to the navigation device. There was still light. Her legs were not badly tired, and the weather did not seem to be worsening quickly. She kept going. Around 3 in the afternoon, Ren reached an open rock area at more than 10,000 feet. The wind was stronger there, blowing snow across the stone in low white bands. She stopped for less than 5 minutes, ate half an energy bar, and began heading down. During the first hour of the return, everything stayed under control. Ren moved more slowly than she had on the way up, using her hiking pole to test each step along the steep sections. Fresh snow had softened the older footprints. Some rocks still showed through, while others had become flat white surfaces that were hard to tell apart. Around 4 in the afternoon, the light began to change. The western sky remained bright, but under the trees the shadows had already grown thicker. Ren was crossing an angled slope when the tip of her left pole touched the snow and slid sideways. She stopped, changed the angle of her foot, and tried to step again. Beneath the new snow was a sheet of clear ice. The sole of her left boot lost grip the instant her weight shifted down. The slip happened too fast for her to lower her center of gravity. Her left leg shot forward, her right leg folded, and her upper body twisted with the momentum. Ren slammed her hip against the rock, slid several feet over the thin snow, then dropped off a low ledge into the gap between 2 boulders. She heard the dry snap before she felt the pain. The sound was small, almost swallowed by the snow, but Ren knew at once that it had not come from a branch or her hiking pole. Her left leg was trapped beneath her body at the wrong angle. A white-hot pain burst up from her lower leg, sharp enough to shrink everything in front of her into a narrow ring of light. Ren lay still, unable to breathe for several seconds. Then air returned to her lungs with a hiss. She tried to turn, and the pain shot up toward her knee. Her first reaction was denial. She told herself it was only a severe sprain or a hard blow to the bone. But when she reached down, she felt a slight deformity in the lower left leg beneath her pants. Ren did not try to stand. The problem was in the left leg, where the pain throbbed with her heartbeat and slowly spread into a deep, burning heat inside. She pulled her phone from the chest pocket. One corner of the screen had cracked into a white web. When she turned it on, the light flashed, then died. Ren held the power button, but the screen showed only a faint green line before going black again. The impact had damaged the device or disconnected the battery. She still had a handheld navigation device, but its emergency signal was not working reliably inside the rock gap. Ren lifted it as high as she could with her right arm, waited almost a minute, and tried again. There was no confirmation. The light was draining out of the forest. Snow kept falling. The main trail was about 15 feet above where she had landed, but the slope between the two places was steep and slick. With a likely broken left leg, climbing back up was almost impossible. Staying in the open gap between the rocks was also dangerous because the wind was increasing. Ren checked the area around her. Below the place where she had fallen, a narrow pocket ran between the rock wall and a large boulder. The space was low, not high enough to stand, but it was deeper and protected on one side. If she could drag herself into it, she could avoid most of the direct wind. She unfastened the backpack straps, pulled the pack down beside her, and used a hiking pole as a temporary splint. Ren wrapped elastic bandage around her lower leg and the pole, trying to keep the bone as stable as possible. Each wrap brought cold sweat to her forehead. Stop times, breathe slowly, and wait for the nausea to pass. Then Ren began to crawl. She used both elbows and her right leg to push her body forward a few inches at a time. She dragged the backpack by its strap. Each time the left leg touched stone, the pain flared and darkened her vision. The actual distance was less than 20 feet, but it took her nearly half an hour to reach the deeper gap. The ground slanted and was covered with snow and gravel. The rock wall behind her felt as cold as metal. Still, the large boulder blocked most of the wind from the west, and the low shelf of stone overhead kept the snow from falling directly onto her. Ren wedged the backpack under her back, spread the emergency insulation sheet over the ground, and wrapped the silver blanket around her body. By the time she finished, the light was almost gone. She checked her food and water. One water bottle had partly frozen. The first aid kit held chemical heat packs, compression bandages, and gauze. She placed 2 heat packs near her chest and abdomen, careful not to press them directly against her skin. She tried the navigation device again. No signal. Ren knew a search would not begin right away. She had sent her route to a friend in Denver, but she had expected to return late that evening. If she did not make contact, her friend might wait a while, assuming Ren was driving through an area without service. The temperature dropped fast after dark. Ren did not have a thermometer, but the feeling inside the rock pocket changed clearly. Her breath turned into thicker mist. Her fingers stung, then slowly stiffened. She kept moving them, held both hands under her armpits, and pulled her right leg close to her body. The left leg remained still, aching beneath the splint. At first, Ren kept herself awake by counting breaths and repeating survival steps. Stay dry, keep the core warm, do not eat too fast. Do not drink all the water. Do not move unless you have to. But cold does not arrive as one single wave. It slips in through small openings, through the seams of gloves, through the pants pressed against stone, through the collar each time she tilted her head. Little by little, the cold became a weight, pulling down her eyelids and slowing her thoughts. Ren fell asleep the first time without realizing it. She woke because her whole body was shaking so hard her teeth struck together. The headlamp was still on, but the light had weakened. She did not know how long she had been asleep. Her wristwatch showed a little after 7 at night. She ate part of the energy bar, took 2 sips of water, and checked the toes on her right foot. She could still feel them. The left leg hurt deeply, but it had not gone completely numb. The time after that broke into short periods of waking and scattered patches of sleep. Each time she woke, she checked the lamp, moved her hands, drank a little water, and listened. The forest at night was not completely silent. Wind moved through the canopy, snow fell from branches, wood contracted in the cold, and sometimes a small animal moved somewhere farther away. Wren did not hear any nearby howling. There were no footsteps circling the rock pocket. In the middle of the night, most animals around her seemed quieter, and the coyotes had not yet reached their most active period. In her mind, the dangers were only the cold, the injury, and the possibility that no one would find her before the next day. Around midnight, the temperature dropped below -10 degrees Fahrenheit. The rock wall blocked some of the wind, but the air inside the pocket was so cold that every deep breath made her chest hurt. Wren replaced the second heat pack, placing it near a major artery low on her abdomen beneath her clothing. She thought about her apartment in Denver, where the heat was often too strong at night. She remembered the cup left in the sink, the computer still asleep, and an email she had not answered. At one point, Wren believed she heard someone calling from above. She gathered air and answered, but only wind moved through the rocks. The loneliness in the dark no longer felt like an empty space. It became something heavy, pressing against her chest, and turning every thought back to the same question. Was anyone looking for her yet? During those brief moments awake, Wren also thought about the mistake that had brought her into the rock gap. She did not blame the weather because the snow had been forecast. She could not blame the trail either because late-season ice patches were a familiar risk at this elevation. What stayed with her was the decision to keep going after she knew she should have turned around. A single mile that had seemed harmless pulled her beyond the safe part of the day. The feeling did not come as fierce self-blame, but as a cold calculation repeating in her mind. If she had turned back 30 minutes earlier, she would have crossed that slope before the snow hid the ice. But Wren understood that survival did not depend on putting the past on trial. She forced herself back to the present, checked the remaining warmth in the heat packs, and kept her breathing from slowing too much. Close to 2 in the morning, Wren woke in a haze. It took her several seconds to remember where she was. The shivering had lessened, and that frightened her more than when it had been violent. She knew that a body stopping its shivering could mean its temperature was falling into dangerous territory. Wren forced herself to move, rubbed both arms, ate the rest of the energy bar, and pulled the silver blanket tighter. She spoke out loud, just to hear a human voice. "Don't sleep deep," Wren reminded herself. Her voice was hoarse and small, swallowed almost immediately by the stone. The words did not make her warmer, but they kept her awake a little longer. Wren began counting backward from 1,000, then from 500. She lost her place several times and had to start over, and that small irritation kept her mind working. Around 4 in the morning, the sky was still dark, but the blackness outside the rock pocket was no longer as solid as before. Wren did not notice the change right away. She was lying on her side, head against the backpack, eyes open but unfocused. The pain in her leg had become a steady background pulse. Cold covered every other feeling. She fell asleep again. This time, Wren did not know the longest night of her life was about to end. She also did not know that the forest outside was entering a more active hour for predators at dawn. For hours, the rock gap had shielded her from wind and hidden her scent among soil, snow, and pine resin. But as the first light began spreading across the mountainside, the air shifted slightly. The smell of blood from her injured leg escaped the shelter, and somewhere among the mist-covered trees, many footsteps began moving toward her. Around 5:30 in the morning, Wren Castellano woke to a very small sound, steady and rhythmic, like toenails pressing into a thin layer of snow and lifting out again. For the first few seconds, she did not understand what she was hearing. Her body had grown so cold that every sensation reached her slowly. Her back pressed against the backpack, her left leg lay motionless in the temporary splint, and the silver blanket around her body gave a weak rustle each time she breathed. The eastern sky had begun to change color. The black spaces between the trees faded into lead-gray shapes, bright enough for Wren to make out the outlines of stone, pine branches, and snow gathered outside the rock pocket. The light still did not show true color, but darkness no longer hid every movement around her. She heard another soft step on the left, then another in front of her, lower and closer. Wren held her breath. The sound stopped. She stayed exactly where she was, trying to listen through the pounding of blood in her ears. Each time her heart beat, pain pulsed through her left leg. Her breath left her mouth in a short cloud, rose in front of her face, and disappeared into the cold air. She was afraid even that small mist would reveal her position, though the smell of blood and the drag marks in the snow had probably already said enough. A branch moved lightly at the edge of the clearing. The first animal stepped out. In the gray dawn, Wren saw a low, lean, quick body, narrower through the shoulders than a large house dog but longer in the legs. The fur was gray-brown, blending with dirty snow and tree shadow. Pointed muzzle, upright ears, tail held low. It stopped about 30 feet from the rock pocket, tilted its head, and looked straight toward her. Coyote. Wren recognized it at once, though before that she had only ever seen coyotes from a distance. Up close, the thin legs and light frame made the animal feel more dangerous, not less. A second coyote appeared behind the first, then a third. They did not run straight at her. Each one stepped out from a different angle, keeping an even distance and constantly smelling the air. Wren saw their breath rise in small, white streaks. Night mist clung to their backs and ears, giving the outer fur a faint shine as the sky grew brighter. Coyotes are often most active around dusk and dawn, the time called crepuscular. The light is just strong enough to hunt, and the cold air allows them to move farther while spending less energy. Wren did not know that word while she lay inside the rock pocket. She only knew more of them were appearing. The fourth coyote stepped out beside a leaning pine. The fifth moved close to the edge of the rock, its nose almost touching the snow. The sixth stayed farther back, moving parallel to the first animals. Then 3 more shapes emerged from the low mist, bringing the total to 9. 9 coyotes. Wren counted again because she did not want to believe she was seeing it correctly. She moved from left to right, holding her eyes on each body before moving to the next. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. None of them moved alone. They were moving as a group, leaving enough room not to block one another, but staying close enough to change direction at the same time. The coyotes spread into a curved line in front of the rock pocket. The distance between Wren and the closest one was less than 20 feet. The rock wall behind her kept them from reaching her on one side, and the large boulder to her right created a narrow choke point. That position had protected Wren from the wind all night, but now it turned her into a trapped target. She could not move deeper. Her left leg could not bear weight. The opening ahead was the only way out, and the coyotes stood across it. Wren pulled her right hand closer to her chest and searched for the small knife in her coat pocket. The folding blade was only a few inches long, useful for cord, food, and small branches, almost meaningless against 9 predators. She opened it anyway, not because she believed she could fight off the pack, but because holding something made her feel less completely helpless. She looked toward the navigation device near her right knee. The screen still dark. The broken phone sat inside her chest pocket. The headlamp had weakened after hours of use. There was no sound of rescue, no helicopter, no human voice carrying through the trees. Only the coyotes and the growing light. The one standing near the center of the line had a heavier chest, a larger head, and a dark mark running down one side of the muzzle. It was not the biggest in an absolute sense, but the way the others adjusted their positions around it told Wren this was the lead coyote. When it stepped forward, the two coyotes on either side shifted by half a step. When it stopped, the whole group held still. Its eyes were pale yellow. In the gray light, that color looked cold and sharp. It stared directly at Wren, long enough for her to understand that it had recognized her injury and knew she could not run. The lead coyote lowered its muzzle and smelled the snow. The blood from Wren's left leg had soaked through her pants, bandage, and splint. During the night, the cold may have weakened the scent, but when the wind shifted near dawn, that smell escaped the rock pocket and spread through the trees. Wren understood that the coyotes had not wandered past by chance. They had followed the trail to her. She tried to lift herself on her elbows. A hard bolt of pain ran from her lower leg up to her hip, forcing air out of her throat. The silver blanket slipped down, exposing her jacket and the splinted leg. Several coyotes immediately changed posture. Their ears rose higher. Two on the outer edges stepped farther to the sides, widening the curve. Wren lowered herself again. She knew running was impossible. Coyotes usually avoided healthy adult humans, but Wren was lying low, unable to stand, carrying the smell of blood and exhausted after a night in the cold. The lead coyote moved one more step. The snow compressed beneath its front paw. It stopped, looked at Wren, then glanced to both sides as if checking the position of the pack. The others did not rush forward. They kept their distance, but the curve in front of the rock pocket tightened. Wren picked up a small stone with her left hand. Her fingers were so stiff she almost dropped it. She threw it toward the closest coyote, but her arm no longer had enough strength. The stone fell into the snow between them, landing several feet short. The coyote jerked its head back half a step, then stood still. None of them left. Wren forced her voice as loud as she could. "Go away!" Wren shouted, but the sound came out hoarse and broken, weaker than she expected. The shout carried out of the rock pocket and died between the trees. Two coyotes backed up one step. The lead coyote only lowered its head, the upper lip lifting slightly off its teeth. A small growl came out, not loud but clear in the cold air. She saw the teeth. At that distance, Wren could make out white canines, dark gums, frost clinging to the fur along the neck, and an old tear in the left ear. It was measuring the space between itself and her. Wren pulled the backpack in front of her body like a shield. The movement shifted the broken bones slightly inside the splint, and pain flared hard. She bit down on her lip so she would not cry out. Small bright spots appeared in front of her eyes. When they faded, the coyotes were still there. The sky kept brightening. The light revealed bark, ice on stone, brown bands across the coyotes' shoulders, and moisture on their whiskers. But seeing more clearly did not bring hope. The lead coyote moved 2 steps closer. The distance was now about 15 feet. It did not walk in one straight line. It drifted slightly to the left, testing whether Wren could track it. When she turned her head with it, the coyote stopped. Another coyote on the right immediately moved closer, as if the group was testing the limits of her reactions. Wren understood this was not the attack yet, this was the assessment. The coyotes were checking whether she could stand, fight back, or retreat deeper into the rocks. Wren tried to keep the knife pointed outward. The small steel blade shook with her hand. She moved her eyes across each animal, refusing to focus only on the leader. 2 on the left were easing back and circling behind a tree. 3 on the right stayed low, shoulders close to the snow. The others remained in front. They did not need to hurry. The cold and the injury were doing part of their work for them. Her right leg was beginning to numb. Her shoulders hurt from holding the backpack. Wren knew that if she lost consciousness again, the coyotes could close the distance before she reacted. She thought of the small emergency whistle attached to the backpack. Her hand followed the strap, found the device, and squeezed hard. A high shriek burst out, sharp and sudden. 3 coyotes jumped back. 1 turned its head fully to the side. But the lead coyote retreated only 1 step, then stopped and watched. Wren pressed the whistle again. The sound was weaker. The battery had been cold all night. The shriek lasted a few seconds, then faded into a thin, static-like rasp. The coyotes held their distance, but they did not leave the area. After a while, the lead coyote stepped back into its old position. It had learned that the sound did not hurt. Realizing that made Wren cold in a way that had nothing to do with weather. Every tool she had seemed useful only once, and the coyotes were updating their response faster than she could think of another defense. In that moment, Wren realized the quietness of the pack was more frightening than howling. They were not fighting each other to move first, and they were not rushing forward in excitement. Each coyote held its position, studied her reaction, and waited for the lead animal to decide. Their patience told her she was facing a group of predators that knew how to work together, not hungry animals acting in chaos. She controlled her breathing, kept the hand holding the knife from shaking, and forced herself to look straight out of the rock pocket. If one coyote moved closer, the others could close in at the same time. Every opening in front of her was shrinking with each slow step. The lead coyote angled its body, stepped to the right, and moved closer. Two others adjusted at once, keeping it at the center of the formation. The curve in front of the rock pocket tightened. Wren could hear toenails touching stone beneath the snow. If the rescue team had started searching, they would still need hours to reach her. All Wren could do was wait. She pressed her back against the backpack, held the knife in front of her chest, and tried to make her body look larger in the cramped space. The lead coyote stopped about 12 feet away. It lowered its shoulders, spread its front feet slightly, and shifted its weight back, as if preparing either to spring forward or retreat quickly. Its breath formed a white cloud. Wren stared into those pale yellow eyes and felt time slow down. She heard every heartbeat, every breath of wind moving through the branches, and snow falling from a limb somewhere far away. The other coyotes stood almost still, waiting for the signal. The lead coyote took another step. Its front paw touched the snow just outside the mouth of the rock pocket. Its lip lifted higher. A low growl stretched inside its throat. Wren tightened her grip on the knife handle. Though she knew the small blade could not change the outcome if the entire pack rushed her. She could not run. She could not stand. She no longer had enough strength to shout again. The lead coyote lowered its head, eyes still locked on her. Behind it, the other 8 began spreading wider, opening into 3 smaller groups, as if preparing to approach from different angles. Wren realized the testing was about to end. Then, just as the lead coyote shifted its weight onto its rear legs, a very faint vibration moved through the stone beneath her back. At first, Wren thought it was her own trembling. But the vibration came again, deeper and more regular, like the weight of a large footstep crossing frozen ground. The lead coyote stopped. The other 8 turned their heads toward the forest at the same time. If tonight's story has you holding your breath, hit follow right now. Because the next part is the rare moment when a Bigfoot encounter is seen clearly in daylight. A like also helps me a great deal. Now let's return to that rock pocket with me. Just as the lead coyote shifted its weight onto its rear legs, the ground beneath Wren's back trembled with one very faint pulse. At first she thought it was only the shaking moving through her own body after a long night in the freezing cold. But the vibration came again. Deeper, slower, and evenly spaced, like the weight of something large, placing each footstep onto frozen ground. The lead coyote froze. The other 8 turned their heads at the same time toward the eastern tree line, where thin mist still hung low between the pines. For the first few seconds, Wren saw nothing. The silver-gray dawn was bright enough to outline the rocks, branches, and the backs of the coyotes. But the forest ahead remained divided into blurred layers. Each vibration came with a deep, compressed sound beneath the snow. The coyotes on the outer edges stepped back to either side, opening a gap in the formation. Their ears stood high, their muzzles aimed toward the same point. That complete focus told Wren that whatever was coming was not a deer, an elk, or a rescuer. A low fir branch shook hard. Snow fell from it in a white sheet. Then a massive shape stepped out of the mist. Wren had always thought that if she ever saw Bigfoot, she would only see a vague shadow, a form passing too quickly for memory to hold. But now the morning was getting brighter by the minute. There was no darkness thick enough to hide him, no shaking flashlight beam to distort his shape. The Bigfoot stepped into the open timber with a slow, steady rhythm, allowing her to see every part of his body. He stood more than 8 feet tall, maybe close to 8.5 feet if he had straightened completely. Even so, his knees remained slightly bent, keeping his center of gravity low, like someone preparing to absorb force from several directions at once. His upper body was broad, with powerful shoulders, a deep chest, and a back that curved slightly forward. Gray-black hair covered him from neck to feet, thicker along the shoulders, arms, and back. Under the first light filtering through the trees, the hair showed faint reddish-brown patches, especially along the sides and upper arms. The hair along his spine rose in a clear ridge from the nape of the neck down the center of the back. It did not lift randomly like hair disturbed by wind. Whole sections rose together when the Bigfoot looked at the coyotes, like a deliberate, alert response. The hair over the shoulders formed thick, slightly curled clumps, drier than the hair across the abdomen. Snow rested on his head and arms, then melted into small drops as heat came off his body. His face frightened Wren more than any other part, because it was not fully animal and not familiar enough to feel human. The lower jaw was broad and strong, projecting slightly but not forming a muzzle. The lips were dark and closed tight. The nose was wide and flat, the nostrils opening with each breath. The forehead was low and sloped back gently, partly hidden beneath a heavy brow ridge. Under that brow were amber-brown eyes, deep set and sharply visible in the dawn. That eye color was completely different from the cold yellow eyes of the lead coyote. The coyote's eyes held a sharp tension and kept measuring distance. The Bigfoot's eyes moved from one coyote to the next at a slower pace, but they missed nothing. He looked over the whole formation, the spaces between them, then the rock pocket where Wren lay. When that gaze touched her, Wren felt her fear change direction. Before that moment, all of her attention had been trapped by the 9 coyotes. Now the coyotes seemed smaller in her awareness, even though they were still close and could still rush her at any second. The Bigfoot took possession of the space in a way that made everything around him shrink. His long arms hung near his knees, his forearms were thick, and his hands were large, with heavy fingers clearly separated. The nails were short, blunt, and dark, nothing like the sharp claws of a predator. His feet left deep prints in the snow. Each stride was longer than a grown man's, but every placement was precise. He did not slide, search for footing, or look down. The slight bend in his knees allowed his weight to move smoothly from one leg to the other, making a being that heavy move with almost no sound except the deep pressure under the ground. The Bigfoot stopped about 25 feet from the coyotes. Wren lay behind them, trapped in the rock pocket. If he wanted to reach her, the coyotes were the first barrier. If he was only passing through, the easiest route would have been to circle north and avoid the entire confrontation. But he did not change direction. He stood directly on the line between the coyotes and the rock pocket, then lifted his head. The sound was nothing like the long roar of a bear. It was a deep burst from the chest, cut short, then repeated twice more. 3 short sounds in a row, each one so low that Wren did not only hear them with her ears. She felt the vibration move through the stone beneath her shoulder, travel along her spine, and mix with the pain in her leg. The coyotes reacted at once. 2 in the middle lowered their bodies. 1 on the left backed up half a step. The lead coyote held its ground, but its lips pulled higher off its teeth. It answered with a growl of its own, much smaller but sharper. The breath of the pack rose in broken white clouds, while the Bigfoot's breath came out in one large, steady stream. Wren tightened her grip around the small knife in front of her chest. She did not know whether she should fear the coyotes or the new arrival more. Part of her mind still tried to deny what she was seeing. It could be a person wearing animal hides, but the height, limb proportions, and movement of the shoulder muscles did not fit. It could be a bear standing on two legs, but the face, hands, and bent knee posture removed that possibility. Bigfoot was the only name left. Fear made her body feel colder. She imagined that arm, sweeping into the rock pocket, imagined the huge hand lifting her from the ground. But when Ren looked carefully, she realized the Bigfoot did not keep his attention on her for long. After that brief check, he returned his focus to the coyotes. His shoulders widened, his arms drifted slightly away from his body, and his feet settled into a firm diagonal stance. That posture did not look like preparation to hunt. It looked like a living wall. The lead coyote stepped to the left. The Bigfoot turned his upper body with it, but his feet did not leave their place. Another coyote circled to the right. The amber eyes shifted to it immediately. There was no startled movement, no late turn of the head. The Bigfoot watched several directions at once, as if he understood the pack was trying to widen the circle. Ren noticed that the Bigfoot did not fully turn his back to the rock pocket, but he always kept her behind one shoulder. Each time a coyote changed position, he adjusted the angle of his body just enough to prevent a direct path toward her. That made a thought appear, though she was not ready to trust it. He knew she was there, and he was keeping the coyotes in front of him. The sun had not yet cleared the ridge, but the light was growing clearer. The reddish-brown tones in the Bigfoot's hair became more visible. Ren saw an old scar running diagonally across his left shoulder, where the hair grew thinner. One ear seemed to have a small notch along the outer edge. Along the right forearm were several lighter streaks, perhaps old scars or silver hair. Those details made the sight in front of her so real it became difficult to bear. This was a living body that had survived weather, impacts, and years inside the forest. The Bigfoot raised his right hand to chest height, the fingers slightly open. The motion was slow and not aimed at any one coyote. The pack stopped moving at once. The lead coyote lowered its head farther, its front feet spreading, weight shifting backward. Ren recognized that posture from the moment, before it had seemed ready to spring at her, but now the target had changed. Another deep sound came from the Bigfoot, this time only 2 notes. The second one dropped lower, making thin snow shake loose from a nearby branch. The lead coyote answered with a drawn-out growl, then moved sideways 3 steps. 2 behind it shifted with it, forming a new diagonal line. The Bigfoot did not charge. He only stepped left once, closing the opening the coyotes had just created. The movement was small, but it forced the pack to stop. Ren felt as if she were watching an exchange that needed no language at all. Every step was a sentence. Every lowered shoulder was a warning. Every pause was a test. She tried to lift her head higher to see better, but the pain in her leg flared when her hip shifted. A groan escaped her mouth before she could stop it. The Bigfoot turned his head immediately. The amber eyes found her, then moved down to the splinted leg. His face did not change much, but the arm closest to Ren lowered, and the hand opened instead of closing. The moment lasted only 1 second. Then he turned back to the coyotes. Ren felt a strange contradiction. She was still afraid enough for the hand holding the knife to ache, but the fear no longer carried the same shape. The coyotes frightened her because they were judging her as prey. The Bigfoot frightened her because of his size and unfamiliarity. But in the way he looked at her leg and then returned to his position, Ren did not see the intent to hunt. She saw awareness. A younger coyote on the right moved forward quickly, maybe out of impatience, or because the blood smell had excited it. The Bigfoot turned his shoulder toward it. The coyote stopped at once, its nails scraping lightly against the snow. The lead coyote gave a short growl. The younger one backed into line. Ren watched every movement and realized the pack was afraid too. They did not run because their numbers still gave them an instinctive advantage. But none of them wanted to be the first one to enter the reach of the Bigfoot's hands. The Bigfoot seemed to understand that. He did not need to rush them. Standing in the right place, with his full size made visible in the growing light, was enough to delay the attack. The mist between the trees began to thin. The light shifted from cold gray to pale silver. The color of the coyote's coats became clearer, along with the reddish-brown patches over the Bigfoot's shoulders. Wren saw moisture clinging to the hair around his muzzle. She saw his chest rise slowly, not hurried at all, despite facing 9 animals spread around him. That calm held her attention more than his strength. If Bigfoot had been an agitated animal, he might have charged the moment the coyotes turned their heads. If he had been hungry, threatened, or fighting for territory, every movement might have been more violent. Instead, he held distance, read the formation, and kept placing his body between Wren and the danger. The lead coyote moved 1 step closer. The Bigfoot lowered his center of gravity. His knees bent further. His right arm came slightly forward, while the left stayed closer to his side. His head angled down, but his eyes remained straight ahead. The hair along his spine lifted higher. His entire body shifted from warning to readiness. The other 8 coyotes spread into 3 groups. 2 circled left, 3 held the center, 3 moved right, using trees and stone to partly hide their bodies. Wren could see the coordination clearly in the dawn light. The pack was not acting in chaos. They were looking for an angle that would force the Bigfoot to divide his attention. The Bigfoot tracked every group. His head moved only slightly, but his eyes kept shifting. His right foot slid half a step back, bringing him closer to the mouth of the rock pocket. The distance between his heel and Wren was now just over 10 feet. She understood what that meant. He was not only facing the coyotes, he was backing toward her to protect the final opening. Wren lowered the knife a little. The movement was too small for anyone to call it trust, but for her, it was the moment fear began to give way to something else. She did not know whether to call it hope, or only the instinct to grab onto any chance of staying alive. But for the first time since waking, she no longer felt completely alone. The lead coyote stopped, its chest rising from faster. It looked to either side. The others lowered their bodies, preparing to rush from several angles. The Bigfoot stood motionless for several seconds, his back almost covering the entire mouth of the rock pocket. Dawn light outlined his shoulders, making the massive body stand out clearly against snow and mist. Then the lead coyote growled. The Bigfoot answered with 3 short, low sounds, and the ground beneath Wren trembled again. The lead coyote held its low posture, lips pulled back from white teeth, then released a longer growl than before. The sound was sharp, dry, and clearly challenging. Right after that, 3 coyotes at the outer edge of the formation shifted position almost at the same time. 2 broke toward the sides, running low across the snow. Another slipped behind a pine trunk and disappeared from Wren's direct view. Within a few breaths, the pack had turned the curve in front of the rock pocket into a 3-sided approach. Wren lay pressed against the backpack, the small knife still in her hand but lowered now. She understood the blade no longer mattered in what was about to happen. The Bigfoot stood less than 10 feet from her, almost blocking the entire mouth of the rock pocket. He did not stare at any one coyote, his head turned only by small angles, but the amber-brown eyes kept shifting, recording every gap, every lowered shoulder, and every step across the snow. The lead coyote rushed first by half a beat, not to reach the Bigfoot, but to pull his attention straight ahead. The 2 coyotes on the sides accelerated at once. The one on the left ran in a tight curve, aiming for the back of the knee. The one on the right came higher, toward the ribs and arm. They did not move in chaos. Each held its own line, forcing the opponent to choose one direction of response. The Bigfoot did not choose. He turned the upper half of his body on a diagonal, keeping the right foot planted, while the left foot shifted half a step to open his range of movement. His right arm swung in a wide arc, starting behind the hip and sweeping across the front of his chest. The movement did not look like a blind strike. Shoulder, elbow, and wrist worked together in one smooth motion, adjusting height just enough to catch both coyotes in the same beat. The coyote on the right was knocked sideways off the ground by the forearm. Its body spun halfway around before landing in the snow several yards away. The coyote on the left took the outside of the hand against its shoulder, was redirected sharply, and slid off to the side. Snow burst upward in two white trails. Both animals gave short sounds of surprise, but there was no crack of bone and no sign that either had been struck in the head. A third coyote appeared from behind just as the Bigfoot's arm reached the end of the sweep. It came out of the dark space between two trunks, body low, muzzle aimed at the exposed back. Wren saw it one beat early and wanted to warn him, but her throat produced only a hoarse breath. The Bigfoot was still half turned forward, but his left shoulder had already dropped before the coyote leaped. He turned his hips at exactly the right moment. The left hand opened, waiting at the height of the coyote's neck. When the animal came in, the Bigfoot did not flinch or swing backward. He caught the loose skin at the back of the neck just behind the ears and used the coyote's own momentum to keep turning. For one moment, all four of the animal's feet left the ground. The Bigfoot held it far enough from his body to keep the jaws snapping at empty air, then threw it in a low arc toward a clear patch of snow. The coyote landed on its side, rolled twice, and slid several more feet. It stayed still for one beat, then pushed itself upright. Its first step was unsteady, but it could still run back toward the pack. Wren realized the throw had been adjusted so the animal landed in soft snow instead of against a tree or rock. The move was violent, but it was not meant to end the animal's life. The lead coyote stopped its false charge at a safe distance. The pale yellow eyes moved from the two coyotes that had been knocked away to the one that had been thrown, then returned to the Bigfoot. Its ears pinned closer to its head. The tail lowered, but the body stayed tense. It gave one short, sharp howl. The others immediately pulled back, gathering into a wider curve nearly 20 feet from the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot did not chase them. He stepped back exactly once, his heel nearly touching the edge of the rock pocket where Wren lay. His body turned slightly, placing his broad shoulder across most of her from the front. The right arm lowered, hand open. The left arm stayed closer to the chest, ready to respond. That position gave him no advantage in a pursuit, but it sealed off every direct path to Wren. The coyotes began moving again. The lead animal paced sideways in front of the trees, testing each angle. The two storks in the first rush stood behind the others, still putting weight on all four legs. A smaller coyote circled far to the right, using a rock outcrop to hide part of its body. Two more spreads left, where the ground rose and could give them a downhill line of attack. The Bigfoot adjusted very little. His left foot shifted sideways by half the length of his foot. His right shoulder rotated outward. Those two small changes closed the opening the pack was trying to create around the rock pocket. Wren understood that he was not watching each coyote as a separate target. He was reading the entire formation, keeping his body centered between her and every possible approach. The second attack began with the smallest coyote on the right. It darted out from behind the rock, trying to make the Bigfoot turn. At the same time, two on the left charged downhill, one low toward the leg, the other springing higher toward the shoulder. The lead coyote held the middle and advanced half a beat slower, waiting for an opening. The Bigfoot stepped diagonally forward instead of backing up. That movement made the right coyote's path too narrow. When it tried to change direction, the Bigfoot lowered his left hand, touched the shoulder, and pushed it outward. The push was short but exact, sending the coyote sliding past the line toward Wren. The two on the left arrived almost together. The Bigfoot raised his right arm along the slope, used the forearm to block the one that jumped high, then turned his shoulder to guide it aside. At the same time, his left foot moved back half a step, causing the low attacker to miss the target at the knee. His left hand dropped onto its back, not striking, but pressing at an angle. The animal lost balance, rolled through the snow, and bumped lightly into the first coyote. The lead coyote used that moment to rush straight in. Its jaws opened, aimed at the extended arm. The Bigfoot pulled the arm back just before the teeth closed, then turned his elbow across the coyote's muzzle. It was not a direct blow. The forearm simply became a hard barrier, pushing the animal's head to the left. The lead coyote landed, clawed 4 lines into the snow, and immediately retreated out of reach. Ren saw that the Bigfoot had not lost position after the whole sequence. His feet still stood between the rock pocket and the pack. His back remained mostly toward her, but his head and eyes kept changing angles to watch both sides. Every block traveled only as far as it needed to. Every step brought him back to the center of the defense. One coyote suddenly rushed low from the right, slipping through a small gap beneath the arm. It came within a few feet of the rock pocket. Ren tightened her grip on the knife, but the Bigfoot reacted before she could lift her hand. His right foot came down directly in front of the animal's muzzle, not stepping on its head, only blocking the path. The coyote had to turn sharply. The Bigfoot leaned and used the back of his hand to push against its ribs, sending it sliding away. The Bigfoot released 2 short growls. The low pitch moved through the ground and made the stone beneath Ren's shoulder tremble slightly. The pack stopped. The lead coyote looked at each member of the group, then raised its head and gave another short howl. This time, the pack withdrew deeper toward the tree line, almost 30 feet from the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot still did not pursue. He backed into the same place in front of the rock pocket. His shoulders dropped a little, but the hair along his spine remained raised. A thin red line had appeared on his right forearm, probably from the lead coyote's grazing bite. The Bigfoot did not look at the scratch, did not lick it, did not touch it. His attention stayed on the pack. The light had grown clearer, enough for Ren to see every change in his face. His lips were not pulled back from the teeth the way the coyote's were. His jaw remained tight and his jaws opened wide with each breath. His eyes did not stay too long on any one target, but every shift had a purpose. He was not being provoked by growls or false charges. He was waiting for real movement. The third attack came faster than the first two. 2 coyotes on the left rushed first, one high, one low. Almost at the same time, 3 burst from the right, creating a band of motion difficult for human eyes to follow. The lead coyote stayed in the middle, waiting for the Bigfoot to expose his side. The Bigfoot turned around on his right foot as the pivot. His left arm swept low, forcing the 2 on the left to change direction. His right arm rose higher and stopped the first animal from the right with an open palm. He did not push straight into the chest, but angled the force aside, guiding the coyote out of its path like something sliding down a slope. The second coyote from the right sprang upward. The Bigfoot lowered his shoulder so the animal brushed across the thick hair and then used an elbow to guide the hip away. The coyote dropped into the snow, rolled once, and stood quickly. The third tried to circle behind, but the Bigfoot had already turned another half step, and the left hand caught the loose skin at the back of the neck. This time, Ren saw clearly how he controlled the force. The fingers closed around the loose skin, not the throat. The Bigfoot lifted the coyote only high enough to stop the bite, turned, and then released it in a low arc. The animal landed on its side in the snow, slid away, and scrambled back up at once. The lead coyote came in just as both of the Bigfoot's arms were extended in opposite directions. It aimed for the left ribs where the body was open. The Bigfoot did not turn his whole body. He only dropped the left elbow, took one diagonal step, and used his hip to change the angle. The coyote's jaws closed on the outer hair, but could not hold. The Bigfoot pulled the ribs away, brought the forearm across the animal's chest, and pushed. The lead coyote was driven back several feet and landed on all 4 paws. It slid, caught its balance, and stood watching. The Bigfoot could have followed in that moment. The distance between them was only a few steps, but he stopped as soon as the coyote was outside the space near Ren. The lead coyote gave a short howl, higher than the 2 before. The whole pack immediately backed toward the trees. They did not scatter in panic, but retreated out of reach and gathered into a new formation. Several were breathing hard. 2 held their legs a little stiffly, but none lay in the snow. The Bigfoot took exactly 1 step back. His heel nearly touched the stone in front of Ren. His whole body blocked the mouth of the rock pocket, shoulders wide, arms lowered but ready. He did not watch the retreating animals for too long. The amber eyes swept across the formation, then turned back to check Ren. This time, daylight was clear enough for her to see the small change in his eyes. The tension was still there, but there was no blind anger. He looked at her as if checking on a responsibility that was not finished yet. When he saw Ren was still conscious, he turned back to the pack and held his ground. Ren understood that the most astonishing thing was not the strength. Anyone looking at that body could guess Bigfoot was stronger than any single coyote. The unusual part was how he used that strength. He knew he could cause severe injuries, and so every movement had been reduced to only what was necessary. The coyotes stood at the edge of the trees, and none charged again. The lead coyote kept looking at the Bigfoot, but its tail had dropped low. The growl in its throat faded. Behind them, the first sunlight began touching the tops of the pines, turning the silver mist into thin bands of light. The Bigfoot stood inside that light, back covering the rock pocket, not chasing and not leaving. The fight was not completely over. But Ren understood one thing clearly. The Bigfoot was not trying to win by destroying the pack. He was only forcing them to choose retreat. And through all three attacks, the Bigfoot's choice had never changed. He always placed his body between Ren and danger. The first sunlight crossed the ridge just after the third attack failed. Thin bands of light passed through the pine canopy and fell onto snow torn up by pause and sudden changes of direction. The lead coyote stood at the edge of the trees for several more seconds, head low, breath coming in white clouds. It looked at the Bigfoot, then toward the rock pocket where Ren lay. At last it gave a short howl. The other 8 immediately moved deeper into the woods. The pack withdrew in order. 2 stayed at the rear, backing away while turning their heads to watch. The others moved in a curved line between the trunks, not scattering and not leaving their sides exposed for long. The lead coyote was the last to leave the open space. It stood half in the light and half in tree shadow, then turned away. Footsteps on the snow grew smaller. One distant howl came from the mountainside, answered by 2 shorter sounds, and then everything sank into quiet. The Bigfoot still stood in front of the rock pocket. He did not chase them. He did not take another step to claim territory. He held his position until the last movements vanished into the trees. His shoulders were still wide, his back turned toward Ren, both arms lowered but not fully relaxed. His breathing slowed. The hair along his spine gradually settled, remaining raised only near the nape of the neck. The Bigfoot turned his head first. The amber-brown eyes found Ren immediately. He held his gaze on her face for a moment, then lowered it to the left leg fixed with the hiking pole and elastic bandage. The dark red mark on her pants was still visible. He tilted his head slightly, as if judging the position and scent of the injury. Then, the Bigfoot turned his whole body toward the rock pocket. Ren tightened around the knife handle by reflex. The Bigfoot stopped as soon as he noticed the movement. He did not step back, but he also did not come any closer. Both hands were open, palms angled slightly inward. The posture did not look like someone preparing to grab her. It showed the same restraint Ren had watched through the whole confrontation. He bent down slowly. The Bigfoot did not touch Ren right away. He reached for the rock beside her shoulder, lifted a broken pine branch covered in snow, and placed it aside. Then he looked around the area, as if searching for something. Ren followed his eyes and realized he was not looking for food or an escape route. He was looking at fallen branches around the clearing. The Bigfoot stood, walked to the base of the nearest pine, and picked up a large branch with both hands. It had already broken free, nearly as long as a human body, and was covered in dark green needles. He held the base, shook it lightly to drop some of the snow, and carried it back to the rock pocket. He placed it across Ren's right leg and hip, but did not put weight on the injured left leg. He turned away again. He picked up a shorter branch, thick with needles, and laid it diagonally across her abdomen and lower chest. The hard ends of the branch faced outward, while the softer needles turned inward. The placement was not perfect, but it was clearly deliberate. He avoided her face, avoided her neck, and avoided the splinted leg. A third branch was placed along the right side of her body, closing the gap where wind could enter the rock pocket. A fourth covered her shoulder and arm. Each time he brought a branch, the Bigfoot stopped and looked at the position before setting it down. He did not throw material onto her. His movements were slow and controlled, and he always left enough open space for Wren to breathe. The pine needles trapped small pockets of air, blocked some of the wind, and formed a rough insulating layer. Wren felt the difference almost immediately. The cold still surrounded her, but the direct flow of wind was cut off. The little warmth beneath the silver blanket was no longer being pulled away as quickly. The Bigfoot continued until Wren's torso was covered by a layer of branches thick enough to help. He pulled one low branch from outside and propped it at an angle in front of the rock pocket as a final windbreak. Then he stepped back and studied the whole structure. One hand reached out to adjust a branch near her knee, moving it aside so it would not touch the broken area. She tried to say thank you, but her throat was dry, and her voice came out as only a rough sound. "Thank you," Wren said. The Bigfoot tilted his head toward her. The amber eyes stayed on her face longer than before. There was no expression Wren could name with certainty. Still, the jaw had loosened, the shoulders had lowered, and the hand was fully open. He stepped back once, then again. At the edge of the clearing, he stopped and looked back at Wren. Morning sunlight had risen higher, cutting across his shoulder at an angle. The reddish-brown patches in the gray-black hair became clear. The face, brow ridge, eyes, and jawline were drawn by the light one final time. Wren knew the memory would never fade into an uncertain dark shape. But the layer of branches covering her remained. Around 9 o'clock in the morning, the Larimer County search team reached the area from the south. Team leader Marcus Ibarra was at the front with 2 rescue workers following the last signal from the navigation device and the slide marks on the trail. They called Wren's name several times. The first time she heard them, the sound was too far away to understand. The second time, she recognized human voices and tried to answer. "Here," Wren called, her voice weak but strong enough to carry out of the rock pocket. Ibarra noticed the pine branches before he saw her face. From a distance, they looked like debris gathered against the rock by the wind. But when he came closer, he saw that the branches lay in different directions, forming a covering over a human body. The hard ends pointed outward. The thick needles faced inward. An open space had been preserved around the face, so Wren could breathe. The rescue team removed the branches one by one instead of pulling the whole layer away at once. They checked consciousness, pulse, breathing, and peripheral temperature before securing the left leg with a proper splint. Wren was still awake, able to give her name, the date, and her approximate location. She had hypothermia, dehydration, and a broken tibia. But she was not in the deep unconscious state they had feared after a night below freezing. In his initial report, Ibarra wrote that the layer of pine branches may have slowed heat loss and blocked direct wind from entering the rock pocket. He also noted that the branches did not appear to have fallen naturally. They had been stacked from low to high, distributed around Wren's body, while the injured left leg had been left more open. When one rescue worker circled the rock pocket to check the terrain, he found dense coyote tracks in the snow. The prints formed several arcs with overlapping sections and many slide marks showing that the animals had changed direction quickly. Some areas of snow had been torn into long bands, matching hard movement by multiple animals. Among those tracks was another set. They were bipedal, deeper, longer, and had a much longer stride. Ibarra measured the clearest print directly in front of the rock pocket. It was nearly 17 inches long, with a broad heel and 5 toes fairly clear at the front. There was no boot tread. The tracks connected the tree line to the clearing, crossed several areas of disturbed snow, and then returned to the trees in the same direction where Wren had seen the Bigfoot disappear. The rescue team took photographs, placed a scale beside the print, and marked the location. They did not make a conclusion at the scene. Their priority remained getting Wren down the mountain safely. But Ibarra added that there were no other human boot prints besides those from the rescue team and Wren's older slide marks. Later, Dr. Sarah Voss, a wildlife ecologist, invited to review the photographs and scene notes, paid special attention to the lack of blood in the confrontation area. Aside from blood from Wren's original injury, the snow showed no sign that any coyote or the bipedal figure had been seriously wounded. The slide marks, pivot marks, and compressed snow showed that an intense confrontation had taken place. However, there were no drag marks, no bloodied fur, and no sign that any animal had been taken down. According to Voss, that matched Wren's description that the Bigfoot used force to redirect and push back the coyotes, not to inflict severe injury. Wren was carried out of the rock pocket on a stretcher close to noon. As the stretcher moved through the clearing, she saw the 17-inch footprint beside Ibarra's boot print. Its size confirmed what she had seen in daylight. It had not been a shadow, a cold-induced dream, or a memory created afterward. In the weeks after returning home, Wren did not know whether she should tell the rest of it. She had the rescue report, footprint photographs, and the documented layer of branches, but none of that forced anyone else to accept her conclusion. The more clearly she described the face, the eyes, and every movement, the more impossible the story sounded. But Wren was not like witnesses who only saw a shape crossing through the night. She had seen Bigfoot in the light of dawn, watched him face the coyotes, gather branches, and look back before disappearing. The memory was too complete to let her forget. What made it hard to speak was not fear of being laughed at. It was the feeling that she held an image of a Bigfoot who had allowed himself to be seen clearly while saving her. Wren did not know whether telling the story repaid that debt or betrayed the silence of the forest. So for a long time, she kept only the simplest truth. That morning, between snow and first light, someone who did not have to stay chose to stay until she had a chance to survive. When I first started editing this story, I thought the center of it would be the fight between Bigfoot and the pack of 9 coyotes, and honestly, that is the part people are most likely to remember. A being more than 8 feet tall stood in the first light of dawn, using strength and precision to stop attacks from several directions, while an injured woman lay helpless behind him. But when I reached the detail of the pine branches arranged carefully over Wren's body, I realized I had been looking at the heart of the story the wrong way. The fight only showed how strong Bigfoot was. The layer of branches showed how he thought. There is an important line between instinctive reaction and purposeful behavior. Instinct helps an animal respond quickly to danger, protect territory, find food, or run from a predator. But purposeful behavior usually requires more steps. The individual has to recognize a problem, predict what will happen next, choose a tool or action that fits the situation, then adjust based on the result. Bigfoot standing between Wren and the coyotes could be explained as a protective reaction. But waiting until the pack fully withdrew, turning back to check the injured leg, choosing pine branches thick with needles, shaking off the snow, avoiding pressure on the broken bone, and building one more windbreak all point to a chain of decisions. That is the part that held me the longest. He did not only solve the immediate danger. He thought about what would happen after he left. Wren was still injured. She was still losing body heat. She still had to wait hours for search and rescue. If Bigfoot had only been reacting through the instinct to fight, the story could have ended when the coyotes ran back into the trees. But it did not end there. He seemed to understand that winning the confrontation did not mean Wren was safe yet. The timing at dawn is worth noticing too. Coyotes are often active during the transition between night and morning, a pattern called crepuscular activity. The temperature is still low, visibility is just good enough, and many prey animals are beginning to move. So the pack appearing when the sky shifted from black to gray does not only create a cinematic scene, it fits their natural behavior. That makes Wren's account more worth thinking about, because what she described did not happen at an unreasonable hour or in complete darkness. But that same daylight creates the larger question. Bigfoot did not just save Wren. He did it while she could see him clearly. She saw the gray-black hair with reddish-brown tones, the amber eyes, the hands with short nails, and the careful movements. He had plenty of chances to leave while the mist was still thick. He could have driven the coyotes away and disappeared before the sun climbed higher. Instead, he stayed, kept his back toward Wren while defending her, and came close enough afterward for her to see his face. If the fight proves strength, then the decision to remain in daylight is the part that makes me wonder. A being that avoids people would understand that being seen clearly is a risk. So why accept that risk? Maybe Wren's condition was serious enough that staying hidden was no longer the priority. Maybe he judged that saving a life mattered more than protecting secrecy. Or maybe we have misunderstood the way beings like this see us. I also cannot ignore the restraint in the confrontation. According to Wren, Bigfoot had more than enough strength to badly injure any one of those coyotes, but he kept choosing. Only the force needed to redirect them, push them away from the danger zone, and make the pack retreat. Afterward, there was no blood at the scene, except from Wren's original injury. If that detail is accurate, this was not just controlled strength. It was the ability to track multiple targets, predict movement, and limit harm while protecting someone weaker. So I want to ask you this: what convinces you more, the fight, the pine branches, or the fact that Bigfoot allowed Wren to see him clearly in daylight? And if a being can think about keeping a person warm after the danger has passed, can we still call that behavior simple instinct? Leave a comment with the word light if you believe the most important detail is that Wren saw Bigfoot clearly that morning. I want to know which moment changed the way you saw this story. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos on this channel. Remember, strength can win a fight, but only intelligence thinks about the morning after. I'm Victor, and I'll see you in the next story.